Good morning! It's Tuesday again, so that can mean one thing. It's time for Groovy Tuesday. So hopefully I'm live and I will get some confirmation from Jilly very shortly. Is there anybody there? Let's have a look. Ooh, there we go. I think everyone's coming in and I think I've got my confirmation that the sound is good. Thank you, Jilly. Wow, Tuesday again. Wowzers. How are we all doing today? Crazy, crazy, crazy. Nice cup of coffee. How are we all doing? Good morning, here you all come. Morning, everybody. Let's just have a look at those. There we go. Oh, loads of people. Good morning, Sue, Angie, Elaine, Tracy, Josie. Josie's in the room as well. Lovely. No pressure then. The queen of the grids. And we're going to be looking at the grids today. So, yeah. Wow. So we'll give a few, what time are we? A little bit early today, but it's better to be early than to be late. Make sure everything's working okay, the sound's all good. Yes, super duper. Wow. What have you been all up to? What have you all been up to? What have you been up to? Have you all been staying home, staying safe, staying creative? I think it's the best thing to do. Just sort of huddle up and get crafting. I mean, for me, that's what crafting is all about. It's sort of that chill out, the relaxing, the distraction. And yeah, it's a nice way to pass the time. And for me, especially with the Groovi system, it's just so zoned out, so chillable. Chillable? Is that a word? Yeah, I'll go with that one. Good morning, everybody. Everybody's coming in. Super duper. Right, what's good? I think super duper is my word at the moment. Don't know why, but it's a good filling word, I think. That's what my head's telling me anyway. So did you all catch up and do your homework last week? Did you? It's great seeing everyone on Groovi Worldwide and Clarity Worldwide, what you've been coming up with, and the little messages that I get with the different interpretations of what you've been coming up with. It's brilliant, and it's so nice to have that common bond with everybody and to just see how people, I mean, I know from experience when we used to do the retail shows and we'd go to the show and people come back sort of in the March or in the November. Oh, I bought it in March, I haven't done anything with it. I really need to get it out of the box. And I know a lot of people at home the same thing. I mean, I'm a crafter myself, so you sort of see it, you want it, you get it home and you think, oh yeah, I'll come to that. And then something else comes and you go on to that and something else comes. And before you know it, it's sort of like 20 purchases later, it's still sitting there untouched. So it's fantastic to be able to have this opportunity to share with you and to hopefully inspire you and give you some ideas. So last week, what we did, let me bring this piece in just to show you. Let's move that out of the way. So last week we turned the circle into a square, didn't we? And what we looked at was the colouring application. And last week I concentrated on using the lovely Perga colour pens, which are double-ended, but we use them with the water brushes. Ooh, what's the stuck to that? And we use them with the water brushes, but without the water, because the nibs on these are absolutely fantastic. And I showed how we can really sort of break down that colour with the aid of the mix mats, scribbling it out, picking it up, and then just gently applying it. But it was so, what got me was how the ink stays wet longer when you applied it direct with the brush, as opposed to going straight on with the pen. Now, during the course of this now, if you've got any questions, Jilly's in the room. She can answer all the questions. You've got some of the experts in the room as well. So don't be afraid to ask. No question is ever a silly question. So we applied the colour using a selection of the water brushes, but without the water. Tended to work with the pencils because they were more forgiving and I could rub it out if I made a mistake, I went over the line. With the pens, you have to be that little bit more careful with them. So I've always sort of veered away from those because, again, you want to get it right, but you want it to look lovely as well. And for me, the Groovi system, the Groovi plates are my safety net in relation to tracing out the designs, and the pencils were my safety net when it came to colouring. But what I found, if you use water brushes, you have that time of a little bit of flexibility to be able to pick it up and sort of move the colour around because it stayed wet for a little bit longer. So what we did was we did a little bit of colour application, and your homework was to go away and finish it off. Now what I did with mine was the central part. I'm looking at the back of my work, if you're wondering why the letters are spelt backwards. I'm working on the back, and so the actual central part of the butterfly I built up over 2 stages. Okay, and so I did the one layer that we did on air together, and then the following day it was completely dry, and I went back on and I blended the colours again by reactivating them. Then on the outer part of the butterfly, I went direct with the pen to get a more intense, vibrant colour. But when you turn it over, I mean, it's on black, so it looks quite yucky and quite flat. So this is where the key to the actual designer papers come into play, because then when you pop that behind, it really does bring it to life. So mine was a selection of using the brush to apply colour and direct onto the parchment with the pens. So if you missed any of that, you can watch that on our YouTube channel, or you can go back and find it on Facebook. And it was a really, it's a really nice application, and it's given me the confidence to work with the pens and experiment a little bit more. Remember, we have that piece that we always practice on. We've got this bit here. So if you're not sure on how it's going to work and what the colours are going to look like, just have something like this that you can practice on. So you can see here, this is where we went direct with the pen, and then on here I went on, it's very, very faint, but you just build that colour up. We also did a little bit more white work and just looked at how the design worked. So again, we've got some leaves down here where we did the white work, we did the little circular dots. So it was all about taking that beautiful butterfly wreath and changing the look of it. So if I bring the plate in, if I bring that in there for you to see, so we took that wreath and we took elements from it to infill the frame using the nested squares. What I also did as a finishing touch was, I don't know if you noticed, I've got this lovely little pattern on the inside. And that's using the basic bold grids, which we're going to look at today. But I thought before we move on to the next project, I thought we'll just finish this one off so it's nice and easy. And I know there's been a lot of requests about attaching it. So in episode 5, I covered various different techniques on how to attach your finished parchment. We used the corner punches, we used the brads, we did the wraparound technique, we used double-sided tape. There was the stitching. We didn't do the stitching, I haven't got time for stitching, but you can use stitching as well. We did the aperture. My finished piece, I actually chose an aperture to frame. Do you remember this one? This is what I say, we built up to this one into episode 5 and we did the finishing off. So I thought what we would do, we'd have a look at this one and finish this one off, so we've got completion on that. And I thought I'd have a look at the corner punches again, because I know Grace and Janine have had a lot of questions about how do you use the corner punches. Sip of coffee time, I think. So if you're ready, what we'll do, if you're all paying attention, it sounds as if I'm at school, does it? You don't need to pay attention. You can watch it on catch up again, can't you? I've taken a piece of the beautiful Barb's favourite designer paper, and we looked at those last month as well, where in a pack you get 2 different designs in one pack, and you get 10 sheets in total, 5 of this design and 5 of this one. So it's a real nice sampler if you're thinking, oh, I don't know which designer papers to go with. And then we also looked at the other ones in the collection, and then the Shack pack that Barb put together that contains 5 packs and 50 sheets. So we've got these on the website as well, and it gives you a real nice, there we go, look, lovely Indian summer one there. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how you can easily use the corner punches to attach your work. So I've taken my piece of designer paper, and what I need is my cutting mat. Is this my cutting mat, or is it the one under? I keep one, yeah, this is the one, look, see all the cuts in there. So what we're going to do first, we've got a selection of 4 beautiful corner punches. Okay, so there we go. So we've got a nice straight edge, we've got a curve, we've got one that looks like a superhero, don't know if you can see that one, and then you've got the lovely sort of scalloped type. So what we're going to do, I'm going to I'm going to close my eyes and go for that one. Okay, you didn't see me close my eyes, did you? I don't know why I did that. To start off with, what we're going to do is punch the first corner. So we pop the corner of the paper into the die, into the punch, and punch it out. So we get that beautiful ornate corner. Now all of them are slightly different in relation to how far away they are from the edge of the paper. So I can't say to you, if this was a 5x5, then that needs to be 5 1/4 square to do it, because they do vary. So the easiest way of doing it is if you take your work and you pop it into that first corner there, in comes the Groovi ruler. So we've got the Pergamano ruler with the Groovi grip on it. Now the Groovi grip comes in 2 A4 sheets, and you just need to cut a piece down that fits onto the back of the ruler. Let me show you the difference. I'm going to take it off, I'm going to move my work, I'm not going to do any cutting. I'm using one finger, a little bit of pressure, and it moves around and slides and everything else. However, when you take the magic of the Groovi grip and pop that on there, it's not sticky, but it clings. Now when I press down, that same pressure, it's not going anywhere. So this is great, especially if you're working with a craft knife and you're working with parchment, because one of the things you don't want to do, and I did it live on TV, and I remember Barb saying, oh, you shouldn't have done that. And so she worked really hard to find a product that was perfect to stop that happening again. So we're going to take our little piece of artwork and we're going to pop that in there. Now if you are worried about doing it, then just cut a piece of parchment exactly the same size, or a piece of paper same size as your parchment, and use that to pop in there. So again, if you are worried and you think, oh, I don't know whether I'm going to get it right or not, I'm still not sure. Now the ruler has 2 edges. It's got the plastic edge and then it's got the steel edge to it. So we're going to cut against the steel edge of the ruler. So we're going to position that in place. I'm going to have a look. Now I'm not going up to the edge of the parchment. I need to just come away a little bit. And what I'm doing is I'm also looking, because it's got all these lines, I can line it up with the edge of my paper so that I know I'm cutting in a straight line. So that line there, I wonder whether we can see this better on it. Yeah, so that line there, I mean, if you struggle to see it on the black, then pop a piece of white copy paper underneath. And I'm going to hold that in place there. I'm going to take my craft knife, and again, people that are worried about craft knife, you haven't got to cut through something the first time. So if you haven't got the pressure, just gently go down the edge once, twice, and I'm not putting any pressure on it at all, and then all of a sudden, as long as you've got a nice sharp blade, it'll fall away. Okay, so I've now got that piece there. I'm going to turn it round, and I'm going to repeat that process along that edge as well. So I'm lining up at the top. I'm also looking down here to see whether it looks crooked as well, but that could be, no, I think that's perfect. So again, no pressure, just once, twice, 3 times, and it just falls away. Okay, so now we can remove our piece of artwork. We can take our corner punch again, and we can now punch. So if you wanted to, you could just do opposite ends, but we'll go for nice and easy, and we'll do all 4 corners. There we go. So we've got that beautiful ornate, and it's not just for parchment craft. You could put a photo in there, and you can go back in, and you can, so if you want a piece of artwork that's like an invite or something, then it's great, because what you can do is you can take your artwork out, and if it's like an invite, for example, that could be the RSVP, and the person has a beautiful piece of paper or something. So I'm going to take another sip of coffee. Now, one of the other questions we've been asked about is, how do you empty? Oh, actually, you want to see whether it fits, don't you? I wasn't stalling. I know it will fit, he says. So you pop that under there. That goes under there. And then the 4th corner goes into there. So there we go. So I've now got my completed piece, which I could put onto a card blank. Have I got a card blank to hand? Or I've got a piece of card. There we go. So I pop that underneath, and that would be my finished card. So for me, the designer papers in the background will really sort of bring it out and help with your design. So that's the finishing off of that part. And then what we're going to look at now is, how do we empty our punches? So what I'm going to do, I need to grab, oh I know, let's pop that to one side, close the knife up. So on the back of the parchment, let me come in on this one. On the back of the parchment, underneath, you can see it's got this sort of like arrow. All you need to do is press down and it slides out. Okay, there's all the rubbish collected. I can tip that out, give the punch a couple of presses just to make sure I've got it all. I'm going to pop that in the bin underneath. And then there's 2 little notches here and here, and they slide back into place. So you just pop that in, and you'll see that it goes in the side, clicks together, and your punch is nice and empty, ready for use again. Okay, so that was just showing you, because I know Janine and Grace have had a few questions on how do you use corner punches, how do you empty them, it's not cutting properly. Sometimes when you push in, if the bin is full underneath, then what happens, you've got little bits protruding, so the paper doesn't go right into that corner. So have a look at sort of emptying it out, and that should make a difference. Right, okie dokie, here we go again. Right, let's get rid of my cutting mat, and we'll pop that over to the back. So should we have a look at what we're going to do? What I've done, because people have got either the large starter kit or the mini starter kit, there's just a slight difference in relation to the design concept on what level of the nested squares you need to use. So I'm going to break it down into 2 parts, so that if you've only got the mini starter kit, then there's one set of instructions, and if you've got the normal starter kit, then there's another set of instructions. So we'll do it side by side, but the end result is going to be the same. So what we're going to need for this is, hey, says front arm, we're going to go for our plate mate. So this is the plate mate from the big starter kit, and this is the plate mate from the mini starter kit. So I'll do it side by side. So we're going to start off with that. Then we are going to take I had this in some sort of order. We're going to need our nested squares. We are also going to need, where's that hiding? Oh, it's in my hand. We're also going to need the butterfly plate. So again, for the mini starter kit, you're going to need your nested squares and you're going to need your little butterfly plate as well. Now, last week we spoke about looking at the grids. So we do them in two different sizes. So we've got the straight and the diagonal, and we're going to look at both of those. Now I'm going to show you what we're doing in a moment, but I just want you to have all the little bits and pieces ready. So the two grids, straight and diagonal. The two grids for the little baby one. These are so dinky. Okay, these are great. So, and we've got those. Then we are going to need an A5 piece of parchment for our larger starter kit. And I've taken an A5, cut it in half so that we're working on the same thing. So that will be an A6 piece of parchment. So that's what we're going to need to get going. We're going to need our Groovi number 1 tool and number 2, but we're just going to concentrate on the number 1. So that applies to both because it comes in both of the kits. Now, if you have them, then you need a number 1 bold tool, but you don't have to. When I show you what we're going to do, you may think, I don't want to do any perforating, or I don't want to do the embossing. So the design you can actually adapt to what we're going for. So we're going to need that as well. We're going to need our tumble dry sheet, and we're also going to need our Groovi tabs. So once we've got all those bits together, let me just deconstruct this so it's slightly, that was just so that you can get all your bits together while I waffle on for a little bit. I'm going to pop that there, and I'm going to pop that in front just there. Okay, let's move this out so we can have a look in this area here. So what I thought we'd do, we'd have a look at using the grids in two different ways. And when you look at this, you may think, wow, I can't do that. You can. It really is achievable. Okay, and I'm going to explain the difference between the two different types of grids that we do. We're concentrating on the bold grids because they're nice and easy to start with. But we also do superfine grids. And later on in the hour, I'm going to show you the difference between the sizes of the perforations to get a completely different look to it. So this is where we're heading, but what we're doing, we're using the grid to emboss the inside. So again, you can see if you're not into your colouring, you can get a really nice finish by using the grids. Can you see where I made my little mistake? I moved just there. Can't exactly put a butterfly on a butterfly, can I? But from a distance, we're obviously going real deep into it. This is what we're going to look at. But what I wanted to show you was, where's that piece gone? That instead of doing the embossing in the middle, like we've done on this one, we could perforate on the inside as well. Now, the lovely Glynis has done a step-by-step project for the Groovi Sunday on the Clarity Matters blog. And she's done something very similar, but taken it that step further. So this coming Sunday, if you want to see what Glynis has done with a butterfly and using the basic grids, and you think, oh, okay, I want to go a little step further, I want to see what Glynis is up to, then that'll be available on Sunday at 12:30 midday. Don't forget the clocks changed this weekend as well. So the idea of doing this small piece here, we can still add colour if we want to, if you think, oh, I don't like it like that. But look, the magic of the designer paper behind it. Does it need colour? Doesn't it need colour? Maybe I'd put a bit of colour in the body. Maybe I'd put a little bit of colour. Because even though you've embossed it, you can still apply the colour. And then I thought what we'd do is we'd make a lovely little coaster. Okay, So there we go, so it protects our beautiful artwork. So this is where we're heading, but I mean, look at that overhead. By doing all those perforations, the colour really does come in from behind. Let me show you, I know, because I know we'll get the questions now, so if I get what I know, or what I think people want to know, out the way first. The coasters, how do you open them? A lot of people think that they open from this inner square on the inside. They don't, they open further down on the side. So let me come to this side here. So what I tend to do, I can either use my fingernail and push in there, and he says push. Oh, try to do it sideways so you can see. Hang on. Go that way. So they open up like that. Okay. So they don't open on the top, they open towards the bottom. Okay. Now if you struggle to open them up, then what you can do, you can take a 1 needle tool or a needle, and you can just gently press into the side of it and open it that way as well. So again, if I want to, I'm just going to use my finger because I can, he says, and they open that way. Or if you find that you can't do that, then just be careful. I'm using a 1 needle fine. Then just gently press in, he says. There we go. And then that releases it. So that's how you open the coasters. So they open from the bottom on the side rather than this clear panel in the middle. And we'll come to doing the attaching of it and how to seal it probably next week. Okay. Have I confused you all? You'll go, no, I can't do it. You can. And again, when we look at that design, if you haven't got the grids, then that's fine, because the size of the piece of parchment we're working on, the actual nested squares, you can still do that, but instead of doing the embossing and the perforating, you can just do the normal tracing out and the colouring as well. So it gives you that versatility, and for me, that's what the Groovi system is all about. So, should we get going? I'm going to go onto the overhead and I'm going to do 2 side by side on the different, because the starting points is different depending on which starter kit you have. So hopefully you can see both of those side by side. Yep, perfect. Okay, so to start off with, we're going to do the same thing that I always do. So if you've been following me over the weeks, I always start off with my parchment the same width as my plate mate. I'm going to get some new Groovi tabs for this. I want 2 Groovi tabs. These are fantastic, these Groovi tabs. So I'm going to pop 1 on there. So I'm attaching my parchment to my plate mate. That one lines up just there. Then on my little one, I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to pop 1 piece across there. So this is the A5 cut down to A6. Okay, 2 Groovi tabs for this one as well. Attach that in place and attach that in place. So by attaching our parchment to the plate mates, it means we can lift up, check what we've done, and if we've missed a bit, it's easy to reposition and pop back in place. Tumble dry sheet, so we're going to wipe over our tumble dry sheet on this one, and this is where you wish you could do left hand and right hand, but we're going to do one at a time. I'm not that clever. Okay, so if you've got the large starter kit, then what we're going to do, we're going to trace out the 5th and the 6th line from the outside edge. So let me grab my Groovi guard. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you do 1 and then do the next one in, and then we're going to go along there See, the Groovi guard's great for if you sort of go too fast and you jump into the next line by mistake. So this is going to give us our frame. And this is just slightly bigger than, for this particular one, using the large start kit, it's just slightly bigger than the coaster. But we're not going to worry about that. And then on the smaller one, what we're going to do is we're going to trace the first and the second. Okay, so the first and the second. So this means whatever size starter kit you've got, it's easy for you to follow along to create the same design. So now using the number 1 tool. So there we go. So this gives us our frame, and this one is slightly smaller. Now we're going to add the butterfly in, and again it's slightly different depending on which starter kit you've got. So I'm going to lift that out and pop my butterfly plate in. So I'm going to keep it so that I've always got Groovi in the top right hand corner. Now that's going to go there. And then on the little one, we're going to swap that one out, get my little butterfly wreath, pop that one in there, and that's going to go on there. So the way in which it's been designed, you can see this one on the butterfly is more central. So we're not going to do anything on that apart from trace out the outline of the butterfly. I'm going to do it on the larger one so it's easy for you to see, because I've got one that I've already traced out. Okay, so we've traced that one out, but let me show you on the larger one what we need to do. In order to make it a little bit more central, we're going to move our parchment. And the good way of doing this is, if I take this straight edge and the straight edge along here, I'm going to line it up with the circle. Okay, so the straight line is just overlapping the circle. Let me see if I can come in on this one. So you can see there's my circle. So that top one is lined up there, and this one is lined up here. And all we need to do is very slowly trace out the outline and the inner wing of the butterfly. And this is the same for whether you're using the large one or you're using the small one. It was just about getting the positioning right, just to make it easy for everybody at home. So we'll trace out our design here. Now if you find that you're getting a little bit of resistance, just take your tumble dry sheet and give it another wipe. And we're going to follow, slowly does it, we're going to come in to that section there, just to create the separation between the two wings. Don't get right now, I've got carried away and gone on to that line rather than one underneath, but in the whole scheme of things it's not going to matter. It still looks exactly the same, it's just that that one's got more of a curve. I'll just show you that so you can see. See, like, as I came round, I jumped into that line rather than followed that line. But we've still got the shape of our butterfly, and that's all we need. How are we getting on with that? We all managed to do that. So what we're going to end up with, let me just take my little Groovi tabs off. One, I could just pop that to one side. I've got that one. So I'm going to put my little one to one side now, because again I'm going to concentrate on the larger one. But just to show the differences between the two. So on the larger one, if you've got the larger starter kit, I mean, you could put the little butterfly, you could put a couple of little butterflies in there if you've got both. So what we've done, we've created our outline that we're going to work within. So at this stage, if you've got the grids, then this is where we're going to go down. But if you haven't, then you could still trace out the rest of the design. Or you may think, oh, you know what, I've got the real hang of this colouring in lark now, so I'm going to leave the wings open and I'm just going to do solid colours rather than adding all the detail. See, again, for me, it's that flexibility with the Groovi system to be able to mix and match. Because when you look at the plate itself, when you look, it's got so much detail on it, but it still looks beautiful without all that detail. And again, we're taking one element from that plate and transferring it to get a completely different design. So what we're going to do now, I'll give you a minute to, I need another sip of coffee. All this talking really dries the voice out. Oh, I wonder whether that's going to last. How are we doing for time? 25 past already. Wow. These are, with Groovi, it's surprising how quickly the time goes. And when we do a TV show, that's why we have to have all the different stages, because we know we'll never get, if you really want to do a beautiful piece of work, there's no need, you don't rush it. That's the whole thing with parchment craft, is that you don't rush what you're doing. You take your time and you enjoy it. And it's all about, look, excuse me, that coffee. It's all about looking at the different levels of where you want to stop, where you feel confident. So over the past, what episode are we on to now? Episode 8. So over the past 7 weeks, we've sort of, hopefully I've taken it right from the beginning, and it's given you that confidence to be able to practice your colouring, looking at the different mediums, looking at the design and thinking, okay, well, it's not just a circle. We can use it to infill. We can turn it into a square, just like we've done. And for me, that's when I see what people have done, where I get the enjoyment from it. Not only being able to share. I mean, I've only been doing this since Groovi came along, and I'm just fortunate that I've watched the likes of Barbara and Linda and Tina and Josie and Jay and all the other people that have been doing it for a long, long time. And I'm just the voice. I'm just interpreting what I've learned and what I've shown, and what works for me. And hopefully it's working for you as well. So the next decision we have to make is whether you want to do the embossing or do the perforating. So I would say we'll do the embossing, because if you've got the grids, you may not necessarily have the needle tool, whereas you've got the wooden tool that comes in the starter kit. So we'll do the embossing on this particular one, but it's up to you. If you want to emboss the butterfly on the inside, the difference is when you want to do the perforating, you need to perforate from the front. When we're doing the embossed dots, you pop it on the back. Okay, so we call these our basic piercing grids, but they're not just for piercing. They're fantastic for me. I remember when we first started, there was no way I was piercing because I wasn't confident enough. So I use them to infill, to add colour. So we're going to take our plate mate. We're going to go with the diagonal grid. Okay. Now they all say on the bottom of them what they are. So this is the diagonal, and the A5 square and the A6 square and the border ones are all based on a bold needle. So they've got big holes in them. And when I say they've got big holes in them, how many holes do you think is in the diagonal A5 square? Okay, now I know Barbara and I did a show once, and we knew, Jim told us how many holes were in each of the different size plates. So in the A5 square diagonal, which is the one I've got in front of me here, we've got 8,654 holes. Yes, 8,654. Okay, in the straight, exactly the same, we have 7,400. So, and these are all precision drilled by specialists locally, so that we get the beautiful perforations. So that's the A5 ones. In the A6 square, in the straight, this tiny little one here, believe it or not, in the straight, there's 3,368. Now, if anyone wants to count these, just double check me, then that's fine. And then on the diagonal, we've got 3,856 holes. Imagine having to do that. Luckily, there's a machine that does it for us. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to emboss the inner part of the butterfly. And what I want to do is, you know how we normally have the word Groovi Grid at the top? This time, so that I get a real nice diagonal pattern, I'm going to turn it so that the word Groovi Grid is down here. I mean, I could have turned my plate, but because we're going to keep our parchment in the same place, I just found it was easier to turn the plate within the plate mate. We'll take our little Groovi tabs. Going to hold that in place. Okay, so that's now nice and secure. The number 1 and the number 2 tool. The number 1, if we were to use this to emboss these dots, it's more than likely puncture it. So this is where we move to the number 2 tool, which has a little ball on the end. And what we're going to do, we're going to look at our design. Now, I can see this because my room is well lit, but if I was at home, I would have my light panel underneath, and what that would do, it would illuminate the holes. Let me just grab, see if my light panel's on. Let me just flick that switch underneath. Oh, just going to climb down underneath the floor just to show you what it looks like. Switch that on. What it looks like illuminated. Oops, it says falling off its chair. Right. So we do the light panels in 2 different sizes. This is the larger light panel. So if you're working with the larger starter kit, it fits on there perfectly. But we also do the little A5 one as well. So if you've gone for the little starter kit, then that fits perfectly as well. Now I'm going to go to this camera because I know this will be easier. So it's got 3 different levels of brightness, but instantly I can see exactly where all those little holes are. So it's easier for me on the eye. But you don't have to use a light panel because you can use it easily on the black mat that you've got in the starter kit. So I'm not saying, right, everyone's got to rush out and buy a starter kit. A light panel. Once you've got it, you've got it, but it's not necessarily for what we're doing. So to make it easier on everyone, I'm going to work on the black mat. So it was just to show the difference between the 2. So we've got our parchment attached. We've got the diagonal one underneath, and again, it's down. You can't see that. I've got it down this side because when you look, it's offset. And for me, if I did it that way, I did test it first to see which way it worked better. I found it was easier, or not easier, I got a nicer finish by turning the plate around. And it's the same if you've gone for the little mini starter kit. So instead of having it like that, you have it so it's that way. So the word Groovi is down the side. Then what we're going to do, I'm going to take my Groovi guard. Everything's hiding from me today. It's because I keep getting everything out the box. There we go. So again, the Groovi guard allows me to concentrate on areas on which I'm working. Coming on this one, I'm going to hold my tool upright and all I'm going to do is press into those little dots. Okay, and instantly you'll see how it starts to turn white. Now you may find it's more comfortable holding it upright, you may find it's more comfortable holding it to the side. You'll get the same result, it just depends on the comfort. So we're just going to go along. Now when we come to these edges here, you'll notice that I'm sort of staying away from them. When you look, you'll see that you don't really want to go into that white line that you've traced out. And this is why the diagonal is really good for irregular shapes, because it gives it more of a natural shape. Now if you want to go really close, then don't put as much pressure on it, and you'll get a little embossed dot to finish it off, but it doesn't ruin the solid line. Okay, and so we're doing the embossing from the back of our parchment, and we're using the number 2 tool. If you've got the Pergamano tool, then it'll be the 1.5 because it has that little ball on the end. But this, for me, this is really fair. The embossing of the dots and the perforating I find really relaxing, and you just get into a flow of doing this. Okay, but I love the effect that it gives. So again, if you're not so good at your colouring in, then this is a fantastic way of infilling your design with colour, but it's just white. And you can see now how that diagonal design works, where it's offset from one another, and you can go in whatever direction you want. And we're just going to go along and just emboss the dots. It's sort of like, it's weird. So when we look at it, I'm applying the same sort of pressure as if I was tracing out the line, but it's just sort of like again, you just want to get that whiteness, and the number 2 tool works really well. And as long as you use the right size tool, you're unlikely to puncture the parchment. So we just go along and we just follow the design. So you may decide that you want to do the top half of the wings embossed and the bottom half of the wings perforated. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do the top on this butterfly embossed and the bottom perforated, just so you could sort of see the difference. But my finished piece that I've put in the coaster is completely embossed. Embossed. There we go. So then you'll notice that I'm staying away from these edges until I've done my infill. And then I can go along and just have a look. But again, you don't put too much pressure on those ones there. So again, and you get to feel, so I may have just ruined that now, but hey ho, let's just see. Okay, so now when I turn this over, you can see, I'll bring that in on that one. So you can see now how it started to infill. Now I've got a little bit of a gap there, but I'm not worried about that because I can pop this back in place and go back into that area if I feel that I need to. But what it's doing, it's given me that controlled design. So if I go to my finished piece, if I bring that one in there, you can see, because I've followed the same instructions that I'm giving you at home. I've kept my plate in the same position, I've kept my parchment in the same position, and so it's going to give me the same result. So I would say I could probably get away with just a little bit of a pressure dot just there. How are we getting on? What are you going for? Are you embossing? Are you perforating? Or are you thinking, no, don't want to do that, I'm just going to trace it out as it is? It really doesn't matter. All I'm here to do is to show you some different ideas on how you can take just the butterfly from the butterfly plate and change the look of it. And just to give you some sort of ideas, and as I said, it's the diagonal one that works fantastic for the irregular shapes because they are sort of zigzaggy. So it means that if you've got like a circle or a butterfly wing, it doesn't look regimental, and it does, those gaps where we had along the edge of the wing, they would be more prominent if we'd done it on a straight grid. Let me just see if I've got one traced out. Let me see, just to show you the difference between the two. Okay, just so that you can see. So pop that one out for the straight grid. I'm going to pop that in there. Doesn't matter which way, whether I have that at the top or at the side. There we go. If I have that at the top or the side, doesn't matter because it's completely straight. So if I take this one here, I'm going to hold it in exactly the same place where I would normally position it. Hold it down with the tape. And now, when I go in, I can't go in as far with my embossing. I can't go up there. I've got more open spaces along those curved edges, and that's the difference that you would get from using the straight, because it is a straight grid. See, so I'm not getting as close, so it's more of a step finish rather than more of a natural finish. So you get into a rhythm, and you'll notice if you miss one because it's not white. So then you go along. I mean, it works, but it's not as nice. When I look at, let's see if I bring, how am I going to do this one? If I turn that over, I'm going to turn that one over. Let's bring it around this way. See, so this is the straight grid. So there's a lot more open spaces as opposed to the diagonal grid where it looks a lot more natural. So that's the difference. And I can see it on screen. If I look up at the screen in front of me, I can see that the pattern is completely different as well. Okay. So on this practice piece, let me just show you the perforating. For those of you that want to give the perforating a go. Because again, at the end of the day, this is a piece of parchment. Whether you use this as your practice piece or whether you use it as your finished piece, then it's entirely up to you. So let's pop that one to one side. Now I'm going to bring in my super foam. So the super foam is nice, it's a nice thick foam. It's 10mm in thickness. Now if I was using my light panel, this would sit on my light panel and it would illuminate from underneath. But if you haven't, then I'm going to use my Pico foam on top. Then I've got my plate mate. Then I'm going to take my diagonal grid again. And again, remembering that the word is down on the side. I mean, try it. Trace out a couple of the wings and see what you prefer. You may find that you prefer the, because you will get a different look. So where's my practice piece? This was my practice piece, wasn't it? So I'm going to pop that on top in the same position. And we'll take that down. Okay, now I'm going to go with the 1 needle bold. We do a 1 needle fine and a 1 needle bold. And on the bottom you'll see that the difference of the dots, because all of our tools are identified with a symbol at the bottom. Now the grids, these particular grids we're using, are based on a bold needle tool, so it gives you a nice big hole, especially if you want to practice or you want to start doing your picot cutting. The bigger the hole, the easier it is to learn. And I will show you in a moment the difference between the bold and the fine. So then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my 1 needle tool. See, and I love this. This is, for me, this is more satisfying than embossing the dots. So I'm holding the tool upright and I'm just perforating each of the holes. Now if you've got the 2 needle bold, you can do it in double the time, but that takes practice. I was doing that this morning and I found I was quicker using a number 1 tool. It's more like a sewing machine. And what happens is that even if I was to hold this at an angle, so if I was to hold this at an angle like I would with a tool, I can't get into the holes. So the grid forces you into an upright position. And it gives you a really nice crisp line as well. And what you do is you just go along and you follow the pattern. And again, the same as how we was doing the embossing, you would do the same where you're wary of the lines on the outside. Now, even though this is a diagonal, there is, obviously because it is it's straight in one direction. So if I was to turn this the other way, it's made up of straight lines, but they're offset from one another. So if I take my 2 needle bold and my line is going downwards, then I would hold my tool in that position and I can do 2 at once. What I can't do is go against the diagonal. So you have to keep the tool in a straight line. Does that make sense? And then you just go along. Now you'll notice that as I'm using a 2 needle tool, I'm getting more resistance from the tool because I'm making 2 holes at once. And see how the parchment's jumping up. This is where the Groovi guard comes into play. And it just helps the parchment from jumping up. Stops it from jumping so much in such a large area. So you can see how you can still achieve that result using a 2 or a 1 needle. For me, I'm faster with a 1 needle. Josie is like a sewing machine with a 2 needle, a 4 needle. She's like, but for us, starting out, a 1 needle is perfect. Okay. So what we're going to do is I've just shown you the different combinations that we've done here. So for my finished piece, I've gone with the embossed and then I've perforated around the outside. And then on that other sample I had to show you, where my butterfly's flown away. Where's it gone? It really has flown away. Oh no, there it is. It's hiding as usual. So let's pop this to one side so you can see the difference. And what happens, it's like an optical illusion. All that embossing in the background pushes the parchment into the background and pushes the embossed forward. And again, if we do the perforating on the middle of the butterfly and we emboss the dots all the way around here, it pushes that inwards and that outwards. Okay, really it's difficult for me to show on camera, but it really does give that optical illusion. Let me see, I don't think I'll be able to pick it up on there, but it's like a plique type effect. Now if you want to get a really more effective, if you want it to stand out more, because I know a lot of the design team have got the super fine grid, and there is a difference between the different holes. So the superfine grid comes in A4. Okay, so you've got the superfine straight, you've got the superfine diagonal in A4, but we've also do them in bold as well. So if you prefer to work on a larger area, then you can do that. But the superfine, because we pay per hole, it was only cost effective really to have the larger size, because if you've gone large, you can go small. But if you go small, it's harder to go large, if you know what I mean. So let me show you the difference. I'm going to take this piece of parchment here, and I'm going to take my phone, because I know time, I can't believe time is disappearing again. Okay, and we've only really touched on the surface of the grids. We're just keeping it really simple. So if I take my straight and I pop that in there, these are fantastic if you're learning to do your picot cutting along a straight edge. So I'm going to take my piece of parchment, I'm working from the front again, I'm going to hold this down. All my Groovi tabs are disappearing on me. Let's grab them from there, because you need to make sure that you're lined up. There we go. Again, light panel can help with that, and hold that in place. Then if I take my Groovi guard, so I'm using the A5 square bold, and I'm using my 1 needle bold tool as well, and I'm going to perforate along the edge, and the Groovi guard stops me jumping into the road to the left. Coming on this side so you can see. So if I turn that at an angle, so all this over here is full of holes, but my Groovi guard is stopping me from jumping where I get carried away like a sewing machine. I'm sure there's, like, if you've got a sewing machine, it's called something. Okay, so I've done a row of bold perforations. Now what I'm going to do is jump to the superfine. So say the superfine is an A4. Wow, that's really trippy on the screen. And then what I'm going to do, let me come in over here because I want a straight edge. So I'm going to do it the other side of there, and then I'm going to use my normal 1 needle tool, because the bold needle will be too bold to go through the perforations. And then hopefully you can see the difference when I hold this up in a minute. So again, it takes a while to get your eye in, but here we go. Sewing machine's kicking in now. Whee! And you don't go as fast as I'm doing, you just go. If you want a real nice clean perforation, then you just take it nice and slowly. Okay, but this is just to show the difference between the two different sizes. So now if I take that off, I'll pop that over there. If I now hold that up, let me try and come in on there. Can you see the difference between the different sizes? So to start off with, then for me the bold is king, because it gives you that ease, especially when we come to do the picot cutting. Then it's great because you've got a bigger hole, so it's easier to find the tip of the scissors in. And then as you get more confident, like you will, you then go to the fine and you'll get a completely different look as well. And it's the same as if we was to infill in those back areas as well. So it's just showing what you can do. I mean, it's amazing that super fine and the bold, the difference that you can get from that. And it's all about, again, get confident with the bold first, and then as you progress and you think, okay, I don't want to do any picot cutting, but I love the effect of the background or to infill, because you can emboss as well and you'll get smaller dots. If it works for one, it'll work for the other. So it's all about just showing what we've got available, and sort of if you like it, then obviously it's all available on the website. And if you think, no, embossing dots and perforating dots, not for me, then that's fine as well, because you can, the design that I've come up with, we have a look at that. The design that I've come up with, you can still trace out, you can still put the detail on there, you can still colour it in. It's all about just creating that concept in order to be able to make a little coaster. And you may think, wow, that's a lot of work for a coaster. But how long is that coaster going to be used for? It's sealed in there, it's a beautiful gift. It's all about adapting, and sort of if you sell your stuff, then it's fantastic to have a coaster to match with your card. So what we're going to do, we're going to carry on with this next week. So all you need to do between now and next week, is no pressure, is just finish off your butterfly, whether you've done the embossing or whether you've done the perforating, and then we'll have a look at doing the background and creating a border as well. So trace out the butterfly on scraps of parchment, try the grids in different directions, try the grid going that way, try the straight going that way, try perforating, just have a play. It's a piece of parchment and it's really therapeutic just embossing those dots and doing the perforating. So I hope you've enjoyed today. Barb's back tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the Shack, and you're in Venice. What a beautiful place. And those masks, absolutely gorgeous. So it's back to the Shack with Barb at 10 tomorrow. Then on Friday, Barb's on Hochanda at 9 o'clock and 1 o'clock for mixed media. Beautiful, beautiful stamps. Even if you're not into mixed media, these stamps are gorgeous. Feel good words. Absolutely amazing. And then I will see you, oh no, moment of clarity, tomorrow, Facebook Live, 7 o'clock in the evening, another go with the reflection masks. And then I will see you again on Tuesday of next week. Barb will be there on Monday. I'm back with you on Tuesday. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got something out of it. And I shall see you all again next week. Take care. Stay safe, everyone. Until next week. Bye-bye.